Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Aico TV. I'm Alex Garmston.
And I'm Holly Moore.
And today, as always, we have an action-packed lineup for you. Firstly, we have our relationships manager, Tony Boyle, talking about the energy efficiency standard for social housing post-2020 with the CIH.
Next, our community liaison, Jane Pritchard, welcomes representatives from Hope House.
Then our regional specification manager, Mark Wood, visits the Central Housing Group.
And lastly, we look at the latest carbon monoxide legislation update.
First up this week, we have the first of a two-part instalment with our relationships manager, Tony Boyle. He will be joined by panellists for our CIH Ideas Lab focusing on EESSH2 and how that will help net zero in social housing. The panellists will include members from the Scottish Government and some of the key housing associations in Scotland. Let's pop over and see how they got on.
Good morning. My name is Tony Boyle, Relationships Manager here at Aico. Just really want to give myself a quick introduction. Obviously, I know a lot of you on the session already, but if you don't know me, it's great to have you all on this morning. So thank you very much for joining us on the CIH Ideas Lab powered by Aico. So over the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to be speaking with a panel regarding a very topical issue which not only affects the social housing sector, but ultimately the wider net zero and decarbonisation agenda will affect all tenures in Scotland. So really just to set the scene on things and provide a bit of context, the EESSH encourages landlords to improve the energy efficiency of social housing in Scotland. It was initially introduced in March 2014 and set a first milestone for social housing landlords to meet for social rented homes by the 31st of December 2020. A second milestone was confirmed in June 2019 for social rented houses to meet by December 2032, and that is what we know as EESSH2. These milestones are defined by the Standard Assessment Procedure, the SAP 2012 methodology, recorded in EPC's Energy Performance Certificates. The first EESSH milestone set a single minimum energy efficiency rating for each home rented by social landlords. That target varied dependent upon the dwelling type and the fuel type used to heat it. So in terms of the SAP 2012 methodology, the target varied between a rating of 47 in EPC Band E for an oil heated house and 69, which is an EPC Band C for a gas heated flat. Social landlords were expected to ensure they have achieved the relevant minimum ratings by the 31st of December 2020 for all applicable social housing properties, subject to any exemptions, of course, for some properties. The EESSH was then reviewed in 2017 to 2019, and the EESSH review group included representatives from the Scottish Government, local authorities, RSLs, Historic Environment Scotland, the SFHA, the Glasgow and West of Scotland Forum of Housing Associations, COSLA, and the Scottish Social Housing Regulator. So EESSH2 will help remove poor energy efficiency as a driver for fuel poverty and contribute to achieving Scottish Government's ambitious climate change emissions reduction target. It will also support energy efficient Scotland vision for homes and buildings that are warmer, greener and more efficient, and a housing sector that really helps to establish a successful low carbon economy across Scotland. The EESSH2 2032 milestone that requires all social housing meets or can be treated as meeting EPC Band B or as energy efficient as practically possible by the end of December 2032 and within the limits of cost, technology and necessary consent. In addition, no social housing below EPC Band D should be re-let from December 2025, subject to temporary specified exemptions. More than 50% of all energy used in Scotland goes to heating our buildings. And at the same time, over 25% of Scotland's households are living in fuel poverty, unable to afford a warm, comfortable home, and more than 1 million homes fall below the energy efficiency level recommended for our health. Therefore, it is of paramount importance that we get this right and look at decarbonisation in a holistic way. We see several key themes interconnected with net zero and decarbonisation, including fuel poverty, housing quality, resident engagement, and health and well-being. So this morning, I'm delighted to be joined with a panel of 4 that are going to be discussing this and looking at this as a whole Unfortunately, we did have some technical difficulties with one of the participants who is unable to join us, Simon Rogers, but we might try and get him on at some point if we can. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function there, and we will revisit those questions later in the session. Hi, Lorna.
Hi, Tony. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Now I'm fully charged. I'm plugged in. Excellent. Hi, everyone. It's really good to be here. So I'm Lorna. I'm Head of Asset Investment and Compliance at DGHP. We're part of the Wheatley Group, and we're the second largest RSL in Scotland with just over 10,300 properties across the region, which is just under 2,500 square miles, with Langham the furthest in the east and Stranraer furthest in the west. So if you're living in Dumfries, it will take you about an hour and a half to get to Langham, and then about an hour and a half to get to Stranraer. So a very vast rural area. My main focus in the last year has been looking at developing our asset strategy, taking into account all the variations of the financial performance, so the NPV over the 30 years, how the patches are performing in the social dynamic, and then also now looking at energy efficiency and utilization of the properties. Knowing what you have to start with is so essential when making investment decisions going forward, understanding how it is in the social context, and now with EESSH2 and decarbonisation, just exactly where you need to put your investment in. Looking at the investment decisions, whether you're going to enhance your investment, you're going to demolish or dispose of your properties as well. So it's from the two ends of the spectrum, as enhancing your stock and then actually making those hard decisions to say that that property isn't performing for us. We need to look at other alternatives. And then that's also tapping into our development colleagues as we look to build 1,000 new homes in Dumfries and Galloway. We're also looking at the outcome of the EESSH2 review in 2023 that has been brought forward by the Scottish Government. This looks to strengthen and realign the standard with the target for net zero for houses in 2040. And that will start looking at developing and enhancing our EESSH2 strategy. So we've got an asset strategy sitting there waiting to be combined with the EESSH2 strategy as we push forward. Looking at delivering of EESSH2, I'm also responsible for delivering our investment program. So that's £75 million of investment or going into our stock over the next 5 years. There's a strong focus on energy efficiency works. So we're not waiting on the EESSH2 strategy coming out. We're just pushing forward with that and making sure that we're making the right investment decisions. And also looking at other things as well, the internal investments, the kitchens, the bathrooms, and on all the windows. I also take care of compliance. So that's EESSH compliance, SHQS compliance, but also everything health and safety. So that's all the LD2 installs that we've just done. And then also looking at fire safety, asbestos, Legionella, anything to do with health and safety is within my remit.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Lorna. If you want to turn your camera and your mic off, Lorna, and we'll bring David Bookbinder to the stage, please.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorna.
Hi.
Hi, David.
Right.
You hear us okay, David, yeah?
Yeah, shall I kick off?
Yeah, kick off, please. Just a wee introduction to yourself, David, and your organisation, please.
Hi, I'm David Bookbinder. I'm the director of the Glasgow West of Scotland Forum of Housing Associations. So we've got 65 members, about 2/3 in Glasgow and the rest in all of 10 or 11 local authority areas round and about. And this issue, EESSH and the wider issue, I mean, when I say wider, and I do want to focus just a wee bit on that wider picture around, particularly it brings in the renewable heating that's on the way. The way I want to, I suppose, yeah, all those issues. It's easy to think, you know, if you think back over a number of years and different challenges come along for housing associations, councils at different times. But I do find this agenda pretty damn scary. This whole, particularly the retrofit part of it is, you know, is one really scary agenda. And it's funny because we've been doing a rent survey of members and see what their prospects are, what their plans are for the April 2022 rent increase. And sometimes when what looks like a relatively low increase or planned increase comes in, I'm kind of wincing in some ways because I'm thinking, God, I hope, you know, I hope every association across Scotland, you know, knows what it'll need and is preparing for what it's going to need. Whatever public funding is around, we know this is going to put such pressure on rent accounts and on tenants. And yeah, it's a really, really scary agenda. What I've done is I've got 6 or 7 points around where would we like to be as a sector in say 5 years time. And there might be a bit of wishful thinking in this, but I'm trying to keep it positive, just to counter that kind of scare factor that we've got with that agenda. So here goes. I think in let's say 5 years time, I'd like to think that housing's contribution to climate change, in terms of that contribution, we are as preoccupied with private housing as we are with social housing, if not more, because obviously the greatest contribution to climate change is going to come from private housing rather than social. And it sometimes seems that there's almost an undue emphasis on the quarter of our housing that is social. I'd also like to think that in 5 years' time, we'll be in the midst of a really sort of a different kind of honest, upfront government message, a sort of tell it how it is message, particularly to owners, about the realities of what's coming, both in terms of fabric and renewables, and that it will cost. That it will cost owners. There's no doubt about that, and we've started to see there's some very, very early signs of that. But I think it has to become a mainstream message. I'll come back to public education messages just at the end there, because I think it goes beyond the cost. It's also about how our homes will change. I'd like to think in 5 years' time we'll still be focusing rightly on fabric first, as the jargon goes. And that we will be in the midst of really good, robust financial support for social landlords and where it's needed for owners, so that it's not the poorest who are paying for the improved fabric, improved energy efficiency through rents, and indeed in relation to owners that genuinely can't afford that. We will need sustained high levels of subsidy if we've got to get this right. I'd like to think in 5 years' time and beyond, our understanding of the technological solutions to achieve, first of all, fabric first, will have developed really well, and not least in relation to, challenging buildings. They're all over the country, of course. In our case, stone tenements most obviously come to mind. And within that, and I'd make reference here to Southside's project in Nidri Road, which retrofitting to a very, very high standard. Govan Hill Housing Association also embarking, hopefully, on some work very soon to look at tenemental rehab and energy efficiency. Both those involve, not doing the work in situ. And I think that's a big issue that we're going to have to all find a way of embracing. What can we do with tenants in situ, and what can't we? And I think that's a practical issue. I wish I had some more answers at this relatively sort of early stage of EESSH2, but I think that's one to really keep an eye on. I think that ongoing focus on fabric first will be buying us all time, to make the homes as energy efficient as possible before we put in the expensive, what likely to be potentially expensive renewable heating systems, but also just allowing us time to understand the technology around those renewable heating systems, and time to get out to learn about other uncertainties like hydrogen and what the role that will play. I think that buying of time, that means that in 5 years' time, hopefully, we will be getting to a position where housing association can do what they've always done, and think about innovating, experimenting, because at the moment, I do think there's a hesitance about diving in there, particularly with renewables. About experimenting in a way that then doubles somebody's fuel bills. You don't want to experiment in a leaky house with renewable heating technology. We've just got to get the fabric, as tight as possible, and with the public subsidy implications that has. And finally, I think it's back to that public education thing, and not just the money, which is that sense of, just a message that's going to have to grow and grow about how our homes will need to change with some of these technologies, both in terms of fabric that can have implications for your your rooms, your ceilings and walls, etc., but particularly in relation to renewables and the demise of gas, etc. And I did have I'm sure some of you had a wry smile when you saw that story from Aberdeenshire about half a dozen households that didn't want to lose their open fires, and a week later the Scottish Government saying, no, don't worry, you don't have to lose your open fires. And I mean, I think in the end the Scottish Government won't keep being able to say, no, don't worry, nothing dramatic is going to change, because it will be quite dramatic, I think, over time. And that sense of needing that public education message for all of us about what it means for our homes, I think is kind of just as important, that sits alongside the big money issues. That's me.
Brilliant, David. Thanks very much. Some great points there. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say in the rest of the session.
David, if you could just switch your camera and mic off for me, please. Thank you.
Simon.
Hi.
Excellent. So good to go, Simon. So if you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a wee bit about yourselves and your thoughts, and then we'll crack on with the rest of the session.
Yeah, just one clarification. You introduced me as the acting team leader. We actually have a team leader now, Vicky Harris, who's joined us recently. So I don't want to be passing myself under false colours here. So I work on housing standards and quality, and part of that has been for several years now the energy efficiency standard for social housing. We all know that's we've had the first milestone for that. We've had this process of developing a second milestone, and now most recently there was the Zero Emissions Social Housing Task Force bringing forward the urgency of looking at the whole thing again, and that will probably sit with colleagues, because I think we're at the point where we can't look at social housing in isolation. Some of the points David made there about the impact on owners, that needs to be part of what we're looking at in the future. So I did a couple of slides for us just to cover the things I wanted to just make points to. You happy enough if I share those?
Yeah, please share them, Simon. That's excellent.
Sure. Okay, so everyone see that all right?
Perfect. Yep.
So all I've done is just copied out the title of the what you gave us for the title of this Ideas Lab event, and my contact details at the bottom. As David mentioned there, that the big thing that changes where we are, and all the work we've done in the past with energy efficiency and improving work in social housing, is this net zero target by 2045, and this Parliament's commitment that Scotland is going to become a net zero country. And the estimate is that's over 2 million homes. So there's about 2.5 million homes in the country as a whole, about 600,000 of those in the social rented sector. So that kind of scale of change is going to have an impact on social housing. And the big thing, I think, is where a lot of the previous work, reducing the cost of heating, making things more efficient. When I first started in this job, a lot of social housing was you had 2 electric storage heaters in the house, one in the living room, one in the hall, and huge transformation in the kind of quality of heating that social tenants have through gasification. But that in itself is problematic looking forward, given that gas is a fuel. Whether there'll be other gases that can replace it, or whether it means switching to some form of electric heating like a heat pump, is one of the great uncertainties that we face. Both the previous targets, the EESSH 1 that was due for December 2020, and the EESSH 2, which is 2032, are modelled on the Energy Performance Certificate data, which uses the standard assessment procedure from BRE, which is a model for a generic house. We already know there's issues about how well that works, particularly if it's non-standard construction. So there's flexibilities in that, which we've had to put into EESSH to recognise some of those difficulties. For example, that it doesn't always recognise innovative technology because of the time taken for that to be brought into the SAP process. Scottish Government's been reviewing the EPC, so we'll be seeing some changes probably to the way that works. But one consequence may be that we lose some of the flexibility that we've been able to have in the past with EESSH. If we're looking at standards that cross tenures or reflect whole buildings, and and whatever it is that replaces EPC. So that's potentially an issue for us in that we've been able to be quite almost, a lot of stuff has been left to landlord's discretion in the way things work at the moment, and how much of that will be able to continue in the future. So I mentioned ZEST, the Zero Emission Social Housing Task Force, that was looking at, did this review, and there's a wide range of recommendations, some for government, some for landlords, some for the UK, some for suppliers and training. There's uncertainty about some of the solutions, some of the measures that we're talking about putting into houses, but how they're going to work, how they're going to have that effect. Particularly, some of the drivers, things like district heating systems, for example, or hydrogen, if that proves feasible. Those aren't solutions that you can apply to an individual flat. They're solutions that affect a whole area, either the whole building or in some cases a whole street. And it's about the complexity there of them working with the other types of owners that you've got out there. There's a lot of uncertainty about how much it will cost and how much it will reduce bills. And you've got the risk of unintended impact, such as making air quality worse in homes. And that can end up with long-term consequences for the sustainability of buildings and their health issues. All of which point to the importance of involving tenants in the decisions that we make, particularly where heating systems affect lifestyles. And you have to change the way you behave in order to get the benefits. You have to understand how to use the system to get the benefit. If the one we've seen quite often is where people put in a heat pump, and the way they work, the radiators feel quite cool to the touch. And if that isn't understood by the person who has to live in the house, then the natural inclination is where it's not working, it needs to be turned up. And that kind of understanding is crucial to making the transition work. And this, for me, would be the key message. What should landlords do right now? And I think right now, it's understanding what's possible, quantifying that in terms of what it's like to cost, and in terms of what difference that would then make to the thermal efficiency of the building, and making that the basis for future planning investment. And it comes back to that point David made about fabric first. That's the thing to do now, because we can reduce the energy consumption of our buildings. That has a benefit for tenants, and it provides a foundation for what's potentially more complex and expensive measures in the future, and clarity about the funding for those. So that is essentially me. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully that's
excellent. Brilliant.
Right.
Thank you very much for that, Simon.
Lovely. Thank you.
Great.
It was great to hear from Tony Boyle there and some of the key panellists talking about EESSH2. Please remember this is the first part of a two-part instalment. So to listen to the Q&A and further information about how they got on with that panel discussion, please tune in to the next episode. But right now we are going to a break, and we've got something exciting to show you. We've recently created a resident app animation. The resident app is created by HomeLink and is part of our smart home offering. So let's go to a short break and have a look at the amazing animation.
We're all used to smart devices, but what about smart homes? Aico with HomeLink wants to make all housing smarter. And within these smart homes, we want to put your well-being first. But how does it work? And why would you want a smart connected home? By deploying a suite of sensors and alarms throughout a property, a variety of factors such as temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide can be measured. Your fire, smoke, and carbon monoxide alarms will also be linked and monitored. This data is then funneled through powerful algorithms, delivering your home's health checks straight to the HomeLink Resident app. Insights like these will enable you to live a safer, healthier life, but also be more efficient and aware of potential knock-on effects. For example, you'll be notified if a particular room is at risk of mould, or perhaps if dust mite allergens are present. You'll also know if the indoor air quality is affecting your productivity, pre-existing health conditions, or if it's dangerously cold. And much, much more. Previously, you'd be in the dark. But with HomeLink, you'll discover these things early and be able to counter them before they even become an issue. It could be as simple as opening a window. The HomeLink Resident app, puts you in control of the health and well-being of your home and family, so that you're empowered to take the first steps before needing your landlord to step in.
Next up, our Community Liaison, Jane Pritchard, is joined by Lynsey Kilvert and Andy Goldsmith of Hope House. They're a local charity that we've actually been supporting for over 20 years, and we do a lot of fundraising activities for them here at our head office. So let's see what they've got to talk about.
Hi, I'm Jane Pritchard, Community Liaison at Aico. I'm delighted to have Hope House Children's Hospice here with me today to talk a little bit more about what they do as a charity. We have Andy Goldsmith, who's the Chief Exec of Hope House, and also Lynsey Kilvert, who is the fundraising team leader. So welcome.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you here today. We want to know a little bit more about what you do, and to help raise awareness of your charity, and we always look at different ways in which we can support, don't we? So Andy, we all know with hospices, we know it's end of life care.
Sure.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the other services that you provide?
Yeah, certainly. I think you're right. Most people understand a hospice as being end of life. Unfortunately, very few people have experienced children's hospices, and that's a good thing, isn't it? That very few people have experience. And so most of our experience and knowledge of hospices comes from adult hospices, which is supporting people really in the last few weeks, maybe a few months of life. Different with children's hospices is we support a child and family from the point of diagnosis all the way through their life, at end of life, and into bereavement as well. So a child may get a diagnosis very young, maybe months old, and that diagnosis will be that their life expectancy is not expected to live beyond the age of 18. But they may be relatively stable but have periods of ill health. And so our support starts at that point in time to support the family to care for that child throughout that journey, throughout their short life. And most of the children we look after are severely disabled, and the responsibility for caring for the child, the children, falls in the main to the parents. And often the case to mum, actually, is the real situation. And we provide some support along that time in terms of some planned respite. So that's giving the family an opportunity to recharge and to sometimes do just very normal things. I remember talking to a mother a couple of years ago now, and she'd just come to the hospice and dropped her son off at the hospice for respite. And I said, "Oh, are you doing anything nice?" And she said, "No, I'm going home to clean the house." She said, because she said, "I'm so fed up with the house not being tidy." She said, "But I can't do it when I'm looking after my child because he takes all my time and attention." So, respite is a pale pastiche of everyday life. But sometimes it's about taking the other children to the dentist. Sometimes it's about cleaning the house. Sometimes it's go and get your hair done. Things that you can't do when you are constantly caring. And sometimes it is going on holiday and having time as a family away. And so it helps keep that family unit together. And if we can keep the family unit together when 95% of the care is the family unit, then it's massive. It's massive. So that respite is really, really important. Then do the end of life care, of course. And we provide counselling and bereavement support as well. So we provide pre-bereavement support, so counselling, because you can imagine families are knowing what's coming. Even the young people understand they've got a short life, and so supporting them and providing them with support and counselling for their mental well-being is massive. Siblings, brothers and sisters seeing this happening as well.
Yeah, it's that ongoing support, isn't it? So we talk
about a lifetime of support, in that sense that it's shortened life, but it's from that point of diagnosis through to end of life and into bereavement, and we support the whole family, brothers and sisters, parents, grandparents, the child themselves.
Yeah, fantastic. So the areas, where do the families come from? Are there certain areas that you?
Yeah, so in terms of Hope House, the catchment area for Hope House is all of Shropshire and the Telford and Wrekin area. So we're going all across to the West Midlands, all of Mid Wales. So Powys would be the county. So that's right from the heads of the valleys, Astragunlais and sort of the heads of the valleys, all the way up through Mid Wales, and then into North Wales and all of North Wales area as well. So right across to Anglesey, Llŷn Peninsula, so a big geographical area there, and then Cheshire as well. So it's a massive geographical area. As I say, the numbers of children compared to adults at end of life is a lot smaller, so you have a big catchment area. And in terms of where they come from, 63% of the children we support come from Wales, so up North Wales particularly, Wrexham and across the North Wales, and then the remainder are from England, predominantly Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin.
So Andy, what are the most important services that families actually need and want, really?
So I touched a little bit on respite earlier. We did a survey of families a couple of years ago now, just before coronavirus, COVID, and we asked families what services they need to help them live their best lives for as a family. And there were some really quite stark statistics that came back from that and feedback that came back from that. So respite did come out as very, very important. What really surprised us was that 80% of families, the hospice was the only place they had a respite. So it was the only place where the child could come and they didn't have to look after the child to have that respite. And I was really quite surprised how reliant they are on the hospice for that service. The other area that came back really very high was around symptom control. So the children that we help care for, as I say, have a lot of complex needs and very complex health needs. And they do suffer symptoms, pain and other symptoms of their condition. And the hospice, we provide very specialist symptom control work. So our specialist doctors, specialist nurses provide that support for them. And there's some wonderful stories. We had a young lad again about a year or so ago, and he came into the hospice. He couldn't walk. He came in on a bed into the hospice. Reached a crisis point really, and he came into the hospice. And the team worked with him and his medication for 4 days, I suppose, in the hospice. And at the end of that, he went out, and we took him out for pizza. And he could walk out, and he went for pizza. And it's a simple thing that you and me may take for granted to go out and have pizza. But he was in so much pain, he couldn't walk, and he went out and had pizza. And that's huge for quality of life, isn't it? For simple things like that, really. So that symptom control and that pain relief and pain management is a massive part of what we do. So we have these sort of clinics that we run on a weekly basis where children and young people come in, we see them change their medication, they might stay with us for a while to see how it works, and it makes a massive difference.
Amazing work that you do. How many families do you actually support, and are there families that you can't reach to? I can imagine there's a lot of children in these sort of situations and they can't get that support.
Yes, so at the moment we've got about 270 children who we're supporting in different ways. We're obviously supporting families whose child has passed away as well. So overall it's about 800 families that we support. We don't know, and this is quite surprising and a bit disappointing, I guess, we don't know how many children there are with a life-limiting or life-threatening condition. There is no register, there's no record of this. It's held by different GP practices, it's held by hospitals, so it's not a central register. But there has been some work to calculate this, and in our area, we think there's perhaps over 800 children, young people, who have a life-limiting condition who might benefit from hospice services. So if we're reaching 270, there's a lot that aren't accessing the services. Now they might be accessing services somewhere else, they might be getting some services somewhere else. It may be that they're relatively stable. And it may be just not the right time to come to a hospice. We do a lot of work with parents talking to them about the hospice because people have as we were saying at the beginning, this impression that hospice is for end of life. And you talk to a family and say, well, actually you could benefit from hospice services, and they will say, but my child's not dying. My child's poorly, but they're not dying at this point in time. And then to explain, well, actually we can provide support throughout the life, not just at end of life. So it does take sometimes quite a long time for people to come over the threshold to come in and access hospice services. You know, and I've got loads of stories, but I'm talking to a mum again a couple of years ago. She had 5 children, single mum looking after 5 children. The 5th one was had life-limiting conditions, needed a lot of care, and she had coped for years, and we kept in touch with her, and she'd coped for years looking after 5 children, which I can't imagine at any rate, and doing this until she reached a crisis with her own health. And her own health was in crisis, and she asked for help, and they came to the hospice, the whole family came to the hospice, stayed at the hospice. And I remember talking to her, and she said, I wish I'd done this earlier. I wish I had come earlier. She said, because the support that you give me, but I just wasn't ready for it at the time. And you've got to respect that and understand that. But I think there are families that we're not reaching, whether there's some cultural barriers that we need to overcome. There's a geographical issue. It's a huge area as well. But we're committed and determined to really raise the profile, to go out, to reach into other communities and to explain the services we provide so that hopefully nobody doesn't know about us, and if they want to access a service, they know about it.
Yeah, brilliant. How do you see the future then? What, you know, for the hospice? What are your plans, really?
Well, I suppose our immediate plans, I would call it recovery.
Yeah.
Out of the last couple of years, it's been difficult, both in terms of how we run the service and ensuring the financial, not survival, but the finances of the charity, making sure we can see through that. And I think, and touch whatever wood we've got, it feels like we're moving out of it, doesn't it? It does feel like we're moving out of it. And so we've sort of set our approach of 2022 as being unfinished business, is really recovering back, building back what we had in 2019. So making sure that we provide as much respite as we can for families. We are looking to extend the services into Cheshire more. So we want to reach more into Cheshire, because we think that actually a lot of families in Cheshire don't know about the service and want to access the service. We want to do that. We also want to learn from what we learnt in COVID as well. So we provided some new services during lockdown and COVID in terms of keeping in touch with people and this what we call key work or care navigator. So helping families try to navigate their way through health and social care, which is so complex. So complex. A child may have 14 different professionals that are supporting their child with their medical conditions, let alone social care as well, adaptation to the home, wheelchairs. So trying to navigate through that, parents have to be brilliant at just organising and understanding. So we have this key worker service which we launched last September, which built on COVID, and we want to make sure every family's got a key worker. And then the other one is we really want to provide an out-of-hours end-of-life service for a child that end of life can happen wherever they want it. So it doesn't have to be at the hospice, it doesn't have to be in hospital. If it's at home, then we can support the family at that most difficult time and that most frightening of times as well, so that the child can pass away at their place of choice. We have it in North Wales. We've set the service up in North Wales. We now want to extend that service into Shropshire, Cheshire and Telford area as well. So we've got big plans. They are plans we had before and we want to roll them out. Yeah. But it certainly feels like recovering, that some of the time that's been lost, I guess, and ground that's been lost.
Yeah, so Lynsey, can I ask you, this all comes at a very significant cost. Yeah, so how's the hospice funded?
So each year we need to raise £6.5 million to provide all the services Andy's talked about and keep our hospice doors open, and that's every single year. So when we come back in January after Christmas, the purse is zero again and we have to do it again. Around 1 month of that £6.5 million is covered by statutory funding. So literally 11 months of every single year is funded by our local community, by incredible people who believe in what we do and support us, from businesses like Aico, from individuals running somewhere, walking somewhere, eating cake, schools, Rotary clubs, all come together every year and raise the rest of that money that we need. And incredibly, 86% of that £6.5 million goes towards the care of the children and families, which I think is quite an incredible amount. We have had some good news recently from Wales. I think Andy can probably expand a little bit more, but with T Haven, the hospice down in South Wales, we've been able to speak to lobby the Welsh Government, and hopefully some extra funding coming our way from them. I think from next year onwards, or was it
this year, from April?
From this year onwards.
Really?
So
This year, yeah.
that's good
Yeah.
news. Yeah. So
Yeah.
every single year, I say £6.5 million.
Say £6.5 million.
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that.
It's a lot of cake.
Exactly.
It's a bit PD.
And a lot of running.
I could help out. Not so much the running, but so I mean, how can individuals really help, and businesses? I mean, we're supporters of Hope House, and we have been in lots of different ways over the years.
Yeah.
But how can others get involved?
So many ways. So we have an awful lot of ways that people can fundraise for us, can support us. We have our shops, for one. So we've got 14 shops throughout our catchment area. Closest here up in Oswestry, on the High Street. You can donate unwanted items. You can go in and buy things that you didn't know you even needed. Suddenly you do. And amazingly, in the last few years, we can claim gift aid from anyone that's a taxpayer that allows us to on the items that you've donated in the shop. So that's made a big difference to our retail income. You can become a regular giver, so anyone that makes a regular gift to us, that really gives us some security, and it helps us plan to the future. You can do that by making just a gift every month, or you could join our lottery. So we have a lottery that's £1 a week. Every week there's a jackpot of £1,000 and some smaller prizes. And at the moment we've got just over 31,000 people playing our lottery. So that's more than £31,000 coming in every single week. So that really is great for us, so that we've got that money coming in. We plan our own events and our own initiatives, so we go running, as I've said, we put cycling events on, we eat lots of cake, and people can come and join the things that we've got going on. It's all on our website, hopehouse.org.uk. However, people can plan their own fundraising, so if there isn't something we're doing, you want to do something different. I've got a gentleman I spoke to this morning who's cycling from Oswestry to Rome for us.
Wow.
Yeah, so people set themselves some incredible challenges. Businesses, we're really lucky. I think around 20% of our fundraising income comes from corporate support. And I know I've been looking at it recently. Aico have supported us since the year 2000. So an awful long time, and over £82,000 donated in that time, which is phenomenal. It's donations straight from the business. It's employee fundraising. So I know some of your guys have run Oswestry 10K for us. You have eaten cake for us in the past. And also businesses can sponsor the events that we're running, which means that we make more from those events. More money can go towards the care of the children and families. Couple of other ways, we have a Gifts Left in Wills. I think probably around half of the amount that we spend on care comes from Gifts Left in Wills. It's a really important way of supporting us, and a way of leaving a legacy behind. What better way than, when you're not here, being able to provide that sort of support for local seriously ill children. We have an awful lot of money donated in memory of as well, keeping someone's memory alive, donating in honour of somebody. And we have an awful lot of people that just want to make that one-off donation. They've heard about us, they've seen something that we're doing, they know one of our families, and they simply want to help. And then we have a whole load of volunteers. We couldn't do a lot of what we do without volunteers. Volunteers in our shops, volunteers at our fundraising offices, volunteers from Aico stuffing envelopes for us so that we can get our raffle tickets out at Christmas. So there's so many ways people can support us. They can get in touch, they can check our website, but we've got a team of fundraisers waiting to support them and help us.
Fantastic. It is amazing the work you do. It's very inspiring. It must be very rewarding for you guys.
Absolutely.
And we just look forward to being able to give that ongoing support in the various ways that we can. So it's brilliant. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
So thank you to Lynsey and Andy for joining us. It was really great to hear about how resilient the charity, not just Hope House, but many charities within Shropshire have been so resilient during the pandemic, and how they've bounced back and how they're concentrating on their services and how to improve them in the future. So right now we're going to go to a quick break and we're going to look at our community awards.
Next, our Regional Specification Manager Mark Wood visits Central Housing Group to inspect some of their new properties in New Barnet. He'll be joined by Romesh, and they'll both take a tour of the fire and CO detection that's been installed in the property, ensuring the system has the correct standards, talking about how they specify our products for Central Housing Group. Let's pop over to Mark and see how they got on.
Good morning, Mark Wood here, Regional Specification Manager for North and East London. Today we're on site in New Barnet, a 2-bedroom property. I'm joined today by Ramesh from Central Housing Group. They're an organisation we work very closely with because it's important that they get all their properties up to the current British standard BS 5839 Part 6. So today we're just having a look through, checking everything's compliant. That is the case. We've seen all that. We've seen the NIC certs. So really, over to you, Ramesh. A bit of an introduction, what Central Housing Group do, and how we're working with you as an organisation, really.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, so Central Housing Group, we're a residential letting and management agency based in North London. We actually specialise in working with local authorities. So we let and manage a large stock of property in North, East and West London, all let to local authorities we've got contracts with. So we've been doing that for the last 21 years, and we offer landlords in the private rented sector a guaranteed rent for their properties. In return, we would provide them I would say an excellent management service where we would basically offer them guaranteed rent. There's no empty periods that they would suffer with their properties. If their properties suffer any kind of damage, then we would put that right at our company expense. We do regular property inspections. So yeah, that's a sort of a brief overview of what we do as a company.
So where is it different from like a private rent to a local authority rent? Obviously, I suppose like standards and regulations come into it, I would imagine.
Absolutely, no, you're spot on. So working with local authorities is different because the level of health and safety and the compliance requirement is much higher than the private rented sector. But that's not a bad thing because it means your properties are up to a good standard, they're well maintained and they're safe for tenants. So to give you an example, electrical, which is a perfect intro to what we're coming to talk about today, all our properties must have an electrical certificate. All our properties must have mains powered smoke alarms, mains powered heat detectors, mains powered carbon monoxide alarms. We're not able to negotiate or to reduce that standard because all the local authorities we work with expect that as the minimum.
It's really good to hear actually, to be honest, because obviously with fire safety at the forefront of everything at the moment, it's nice to know that that is being requested before you can obviously let to a local authority.
Absolutely, I mean very much so. Like I said, we've been in business for 21 years and all the local authorities we work with during that whole time have always had a very, very high standard and specification for fire safety. They take it very, very seriously, which is right.
And I suppose where it fits in quite well, obviously while we're here today, I suppose the majority of the local authorities you're dealing with are asking for Aico products fitted throughout.
Yeah, I mean they don't specify Aico specifically, but what I will say is that we work with a number of electricians across London and that seems to be the preferred choice of product because of the quality and the standard that they work to. It's a product that all the electricians we work with seem to fit. So I think the proof is in the pudding in the fact that they all like to use it and use it regularly.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean because in May 2019 the British standard was changed, so it moved to an LD2 system. So now you'd have to cover your escape routes, living area and kitchen as a minimum. So coming here today, having a look around, it's good to see that's been met. And I suppose it keeps everyone happy, really.
Absolutely. I mean, it comes at a cost for the landlord, but it's something that is essential and it's important because it maintains health and safety at the end of the day. So it's something we can't afford to compromise on.
And it's obviously key just at the forefront of it as well is just improving tenant safety within the property. So obviously the local authority know they've got an LD2 compliance system in the property, but it's not just the smoke alarm systems you have to get up to standard, it's other parts, isn't it, you mentioned earlier?
True, that's right, absolutely spot on. I mean, we can do a pan through and show you some of the features that we've had to deal with here. So this particular property, we've had to fit a half-hour rated fire door on the kitchen with 3 steel hinges, overhead door closer, heat and smoke strips, up again to BS standard. We've also had to carry out a full redecoration of walls, woodwork, ceilings, as well as a bit new laminate floor and other sort of minor repair maintenance works to the property. So all of it has to be done at the same time, so it's brought to a good standard for letting.
Perfect. So should we have a look round, see the work that's been done? I mean, we popped a site, didn't we? What was it, 2 weeks ago? It was a bit of a building site then, and then just saying to you just now, it's pretty incredible how quick you've turned this property around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, credit to our contractors. You know, they know the standard we work to and what's required, and yeah, no, it's nearly there. With just a few final touches to be done, and then it'll be ready for letting next week.
Perfect. Let's have a look round.
Excellent.
Yeah, so now we're in the property. We're just going to have a little walk through with Ramesh, see what's been changed, see how you've upgraded the property and got it compliant.
Absolutely. So up here you can see this is the fuse box. We didn't need to change this because this was RCD compliant. And it's all been tested and certified.
So as we walk through, we've got one of our 3000 series grade D1 alarms installed, which is good to see. Because this is a rental property, it needs to be mains powered with a battery backup. But the battery backup's obviously got to be lithium tamper-proof battery. Okay, so this is the one in the hallway. As we walk through here, we've got an additional detector installed in the living room, obviously to meet the recommendations as BS5839. Again, it's a D1 detector. Because it's a rental property, it needs to be mains powered with a battery backup, but the battery backup's got to be lithium tamper-proof. And then as we walk through into the kitchen, we've also got a heat detector here. So again, grade D1 alarm, so mains powered, battery backup, but lithium cells. As well, as you can see, there's cabling throughout. These are connected by an IC cable to ensure all the alarms are interconnected. As you can see in the kitchen area, we've actually got a multi-sensor fitted here. It's an EI3028, which is a combined heat and carbon monoxide sensor. Because obviously, as you can see, there's a boiler within the kitchen, so the sighting's correct. You've got a multi-sensor there with both, and like I said, they're all interlinked as well. So it's all interlinked via an IC cable as per the requirements of BS5839.
Okay, so there's some other things that we've done in this property. You can see here there's a half-hour rated fire door that's been fitted with 3 steel hinges, overhead door closer and handle and latch, and that's with a half-hour rated fire door. In addition, we've also had to fit an extractor hood above the cooker, fire blanket and extinguisher over here, and just over to this side where the boiler is, below the boiler we need to have boxing in so that's protected and the tenants can't sort of touch the pipework, etc.
Well, finished on site today. It's been really good working with yourself, Central Housing Group, a forward-thinking organisation who've got tenant safety at the forefront of everything. So yeah, look forward to working with you in the future.
So yes, thank you, Mark. Appreciate you guys coming down and doing this video and featuring this property. Just a final word from me. My name is Ramesh Mathia, Central Housing Group. We are looking for properties across London, North, East and West London. So if there's any landlords out there that are looking to let their property, please do come and talk to us. We'd be happy to see if we can help and provide a service. Thank you.
It was great to hear from Mark and Ramesh there, talk about the Central Housing Group and how it was formed in 2000 and how they've progressed and setting the standard for rental properties in London. But now we've got our FAQ, and Holly, what have we got this week?
An interesting one. So at the end of last year, I think it was around 23rd of November, the government released the outcome of a proposal that looked at the smoke and carbon monoxide alarm regulations in England, and also approved document J, I believe.
Sounds about right, yeah. yeah, that sounds about right.
So our technical advisor, Owen, is going to talk us through these changes and what this is going to mean for social and private landlords in England.
Brilliant.
On the 17th of September 2020, a consultation opened seeking to extend existing smoke and carbon monoxide legislation and approved document J. The expected changes are that all rented accommodation, this includes private and social rented, must have a working smoke alarm in every storey. The changes also include the carbon monoxide alarms, that you must have a working carbon monoxide alarm next to any fuel burning appliance within those properties. These carbon monoxide alarms can be either mains or battery powered. All smoke alarms must be manufactured to BS EN 14604. All carbon monoxide alarms must be manufactured to BS EN 50291 Part 1. All landlords are responsible for replacement and repair for any faulty smoke or carbon monoxide alarm. It's still the responsibility of the tenant to be testing their carbon monoxide and smoke alarms. There has been no given date when this legislation will be coming into effect. However, we do know that from the legislation changes from the consultation, that when the legislation does come into effect, there will be no grace period. So the legislation will come into force straight away. So it would be recommended for all landlords, social and rented and privately rented, to be looking to install their carbon monoxide and smoke alarms as soon as possible. The new legislation is also expected to make references to new and improved guidance on established installation standards. So for smoke alarms, it will be BS 5839 Part 6 of 2019 with the amendment of 2020. For carbon monoxide, it will be BS EN 50292 2013.
It was great to hear from Owen Terry there, discuss the changes in CO legislation. Obviously, no date has been set in stone yet, but we do know it is coming into effect this year. But now we have a special announcement regarding our community awards. We had the pleasure of George Clark earlier last week, and he has this special announcement for us.
Aico are very proud to announce their very own community awards this year, recognising excellence in social housing and local community. There are 11 award categories that are open from today, and I'm very proud to be hosting the awards ceremony on the 12th of May at the ICC in Birmingham. Hopefully, I'll see you there.
Thank you for watching another episode of Aico TV. Just a quick reminder that our community awards deadline is the 31st of March, which gives them a little over...
Just about 5 weeks left to enter, so
don't
miss
5 whole
it.
weeks. 5 whole weeks, yeah. So don't
Plenty
forget
of time.
So don't forget to enter our awards. You can find more information on our website, and please don't forget to follow us on social media. We're not going to tell you what we are. You can see them on screen, and we'll see you all again soon.
See you next time.
Bye bye.